Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to some folks. It's wonderful to have all of you with us for this occasion. My name is Nehal Sanghvi. I'm the Senior Advisor for Innovation and Partnership here at USAID India. And it's a true honor to have all of you here as panelists, as speakers, as participants. We really have a wonderful evening planned in the next hour and a half for folks with representation from people all around the world. Just from the panelist perspective, we were just chatting and we have representation from Taiwan and Italy and the UK and the Netherlands. And quite frankly, I'm just jealous hearing all of those countries' names after so long, and so happy to connect with colleagues from all over the world. I will just kick things off by just making a couple of brief remarks. In that, I just want to share a quote from Henry Ford. He once said, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success." And there's no doubt that we actually began working on this initiative about 15 months ago, and we've kept together. We've certainly worked together, and today is just the first small step where we will see a little bit of that success of what has taken place from what has taken place over the last 15 months. Credit goes to so many of the folks that you'll be hearing from tonight, including our wonderful, wonderful financial institution partners, our wonderful foundation partners, as well as our wonderful partners at the DFC, all of whom you'll be hearing a snippet of information from tonight for this incredibly important cause. As I mentioned, we started talking about this last summer. We were knee-deep in the midst of COVID. Lockdown was in full effect, and folks on the call knew that there was an opportunity for an intervention that could make a difference. And so that's why we're gathered here today. Tonight's program is going to give you highlights about what the initiative is about, and then you'll be able to hear directly from many of the folks involved in the program. In the process, hopefully learn a little bit about how this initiative can improve the lives of smallholder farmers in India. Really, without further ado, I want to, first of all, thank everybody for being here. Thank our wonderful technological hosts who have done an amazing job helping us put together this agenda, the India Impact Investors Council, and you'll be hearing from them towards the tail end of the program. I also want to thank, again, all the partners involved, and I really, really want to call attention out to the dynamic duo who I'm going to be introducing first. In my mind, they are Batman and Robin. I don't know who's Batman and who's Robin because they're both equally incredible rock stars to have been able to put this entire initiative together. And so really, I'd like to introduce our first set of speakers this evening, India time, and that's Eleanor Keppelman from the DFC, as well as Arindam Datta from Rabo Foundation. So without further ado, over to you both to help us understand what we're talking about this evening. Thanks, Eleanor and Arindam.
Thank you, Nehal. That was a great introduction. And Arindam, I like this Batman and Robin. I think it's obvious who's who, but maybe we'll be discussing that later. So hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's really a pleasure to be here. As Nehal mentioned, I'm Eleanor Keppelman. I'm with the Development Finance Corporation, or the DFC. I led the transaction from the DFC side, working hand in hand with Nehal and his team, and very closely with Arindam, and I will get back to a few more words on him and his contributions. But really, this was to achieve our joint development objectives as the US government around climate change and sustainable agriculture, all, as Nehal said, with the backdrop of COVID-19, and that, of course, sort of overlaid everything that we were working on for this transaction. Before I dive in, I would also like to thank the India Impact Investors Council for hosting this evening. I'm in Taiwan, so it's this evening for me as well. And I just really appreciate you bringing us together for this event. I'm thrilled to briefly introduce this loan portfolio guarantee. I will try to be brief. I'm going first just to talk about what are we talking about tonight? What is the structure that we've put together here? So I'll just start by saying that in designing this structure, we set out to answer one central question. how can we use the tools in our toolbox? I've written it down, so let's not miss anything. How can we use the tools in our toolbox to help small and marginal farmers in India transition to more efficient operations and to a low carbon farm economy, thus creating livelihood benefits for those farmers and simultaneously having a lasting impact on the environment? I like visuals. I need visuals, especially when we're talking about a structure that might not just be sort of easily explained through words. But so here's something that Rabo Foundation actually put together for us. As you know, as many of you who know USAID, we've been deploying the partial credit guarantee through USAID for many years now. We've deployed it successfully across India for the past 20 years. It's one of our larger markets. That's the tool we decided to use in this structure to answer that central question. Looking at this diagram, you can see our three partners right front and center at the top. We decided to work with Avanti, Maanaveeya, so Maanaveeya is off on the right, the Indian arm of Oiko Credit, and Samunnati. These three NBFCs under our guarantee will make loans to what we're calling qualifying borrowers, and the cat's out of the bag. You can see who the qualifying borrowers are, but I will come back to that in a second. Those three NBFCs will make loans with their own capital to these qualifying borrowers, and we are guaranteeing that capital on a 50% pari passu basis. So we're sharing the risk on those underlying loans. Who are the qualifying borrowers? This is something that we spent a lot of time thinking about. Who should they be to achieve that central objective? They fall into these four categories that we're looking at here. The farmer producer organizations, and you can see we have the gender signs there. We're looking at farmer producer organizations that have majority female members. We're looking at ag tech providers, or companies providing key technology solutions to small and marginal farmers. We're looking at companies providing clean energy and energy efficiency solutions to small and marginal farmers. And finally, we're looking at companies engaged in food loss management solutions for small and marginal farmers. So you can see this all goes back to the small and marginal farmers. These are sit in four boxes. They should not be as distinct as that appears to be. Really, we see a lot of crossover in the four. So we're thinking about companies such as a company providing solar powered cold storage facilities. We could see them falling into a couple of those boxes. You're probably wondering where Rabo Foundation falls into this. You can see that they're in two places on this slide. They've played a very pivotal role in this transaction. Most specifically, in the leading role, they've led two other European foundations to contribute funds to provision for this guarantee. So that's to provision in the event of defaults under the guarantee. They also, as you can see with the two other European foundations, will be providing technical assistance to the qualifying borrowers on a customized basis, working with the three lenders. This is where I want to return to my mention of Arundel. I mentioned the two ways that Rabo Foundation specifically is contributing, but Arundel, I'm going to give you the designation of Batman because really you pulled this whole thing together. If anybody knows Arundel, they are lucky. Work with him if you have the opportunity. He brought together all of the players on this slide. He hooked us up with the three lenders, and he really worked behind the scenes. And as I wrote in my notes, Arundel, you're the brains behind the operation and the agriculture expert for us the whole way through. So you were absolutely instrumental. For us, this guarantee, us at DFC, I should say, this guarantee aligns very closely with our internal goals, specifically our goal of supporting 1 million smallholder farmers by 2025. And it aligns with our climate smart agriculture practices as part of our broader climate strategy. Before I finish, I just want to offer a few personal notes, and then I'll hand the virtual mic over to you, Arundel. But this transaction truly is blended finance in action, and I hope you can see that from the slide. The role of guarantor is one that we at DFC, at USAID, and now DFC are very proud to play. We talk a lot about public-private partnerships. That used to be the buzzword. Now the buzzword is blended finance. This is both. This transaction perfectly brings together different entities and a lot of entities at that, and leverages our comparative advantages. I like to call it a partnership with purpose. It really shows that our powers combined have the potential for significantly greater impact than if we go it alone. That said, Nehal, I'm going to end the way you ended. We're not ready to pat ourselves on the back quite yet. I would say that reaching this milestone was huge, but really as I always like to say, the best is yet to come. And on that, we'll be hearing from the 3 NBFCs later, and I'm looking forward to that. So with that, over to you, Arindam.
Thank you. Thank you, Eleanor. And just to elaborate a little more on what Eleanor mentioned about the structure, I'd like to touch on the end use and why we have used the word transition. Now, two of the end use, that's managing food loss and introducing renewable energy to the agriculture sector for a green farm economy, have climate implications, huge climate implications. And the other two, that's farmer digitization and physical aggregation of farmers, is more of inclusive social objectives. But having said that, we see it as two sides of the same coin, that to achieve the climate objectives, the environment and green objectives, we need to be inclusive. And that's why we decided to have these end uses which go hand in hand, the inclusive and the green use. And we use the term transition here consciously because India is one of the global leaders when it comes to inclusive financing, but green financing or environment financing is something new. So we hope that this structure will put in place a system wherein financial institutions in India will also put in the environment angle or the climate angle when they do their financing. Now, a little bit more about partnership and SDG 17. SDG 17 talks about collaboration and partnership, which is key to achieve the other 16 goals enshrined in the SDGs. Now, there are partnerships at two levels. One is partnership across continents. We have DFC from North America. We have 3 leading foundations from Europe and FCDO, that's the government of UK, which has also contributed, all from Europe. And the third is 3 excellent financial institutions from India, that's Asia. So that's the partnership, it's across the world. And the second partnership I'll talk of, and that's more important, is the partnership between the development sector, the private sector, and the public sector. Now, the 3 foundations and FCDO, that's the government of UK, as Eleanor mentioned, it provided the loss-bearing capital to DFC. That's the the guarantee arm of the US government, enabling them of facilitating the guarantee from the US government, which in turn has the aim to unlock capital from mainstream financial institutions in India. And as Eleanor mentioned, it's a classic blended finance structure. And we do hope that such structures get scaled up, they get replicated, not only to meet the challenges of food, nutrition, security, but also for education and health, which is extremely critical for our country and for the world. So the next point I would like to make is that such complex structures, it takes a lot of time. It took us about 15 months to put it all together. But having said that, we required champions in every organization, and we got them because they are complicated processes. There's legality, regulations, local, global, regional regulations at play. So it took the champions to push it through the system to make this happen. At times it was frustrating, but it all ended up extremely well. Now, a blended finance structure by itself is not enough. It's not fair for global organizations to set up a guarantee structure and to put the onus on the financing institutions in India and the borrowers to be able to report on complex issues like, food loss or carbon capture. That's why we have weaved a very large TA facility around this so that we can get the finest of consultants, global and local, and transfer knowledge, the global knowledge, into the Indian financial institution and build up standards, measurement tools to be able to report on food loss, which has been prevented by the structure, and also carbon capture and digitization of farmers. So it's extremely important for any blended finance structure also to enable the transfer of knowledge, global knowledge, to financial institutions in the local markets. Now, as Elena mentioned, I would also like to end with the same note that this is an extremely complex structure, but that is behind us. But the real success of this financing program would be when the entire $55 million has been utilized for financing the borrowers, and they make a real impact at the smallholders level, which leads to prosperity for the smallholder farmers in a sustainable manner. Thank you so much. Over to you, Nehal.
Thank you, Batman, and thank you, Robin, for those excellent remarks to really set the context of what this platform is about. I would just, I mentioned a quote from Henry Ford earlier, and now I'm going to use one more quote, and that is from Mahatma Gandhi ji, and that is, "Strength does not come from physical capacity. It comes from an indomitable will." And there's no doubt, Eleanor, that you and Arindam have personified that will. So thank you so much again for being such amazing colleagues and champions to help put all of this together. It's no easy feat to have 3 foundations, 3 financial institutions, 2 government verticals, as well as a whole host of other indirect partners involved in this. So really kudos to both of you. But success doesn't lie today. Obviously, success lies in the impact at the end of the day. And we all know that this is just the beginning. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Mr. Warren Harity. Warren is the director of the Program Support Office here at USAID India and has just been in country for a few weeks. And I think this might be one of his first public speaking engagements. So we're thrilled to have him. Over to you, Warren.
Well, thank you very much, Nehal, and thank you very much, both Eleanor and Arindam. Really fantastic and fabulous effort that you're all working on right here. And I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to be able to meet with you all and hear some of the enthusiasm that you have about the good hard work that's gone into getting to today. I'd just like to say good evening, everybody on the call, and greetings from New Delhi. Glad to be here, and I hope everyone's well where they're at. Our leadership and I are very excited. Our mission leadership and I are very excited about this effort, and really pleased to have the opportunity to be able to be participating in this effort tonight, and look forward to our onward continued success as everyone pulls together to be able to make the funds available. As you may know, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, is the U.S. government's lead international development agency. With a development partnership with India spanning more than 70 years, USAID's approach has evolved in parallel to India's growth and leadership. USAID programs focus on accelerating inclusive development in India while enhancing India's leadership in the South Asia region and globally. The U.S.-India development partnership today is anything but traditional. India and the United States have moved beyond a traditional donor-recipient relationship to engage in a truly peer-to-peer strategic partnership. Given India's dynamic economy and growth trajectory, its status as a leader in innovation, and its diverse set of private sector stakeholders, USAID is working with the government of India, private sector, and civil society to test and scale innovative development solutions in India, as well as regionally and globally. USAID has had an opportunity to work closely with India during some of its darkest hours, most recently in supporting India's COVID-19 response and recovery. Together, we support clean energy and environmental reform, tackle the climate crisis, improve health, encourage inclusive economic growth, and bolster the COVID-19 response in India and across the world. USAID was one of the first donors to provide COVID-19 related assistance to India and has provided more than $226 million in support since the outbreak of the pandemic. USAID support is helping India to provide care for those affected by COVID-19. We are helping to disseminate essential public health messages to communities, address stigma, strengthen case finding and surveillance, and mobilize innovative financing mechanisms for emergency preparedness. And also, we're helping to migrate workers and micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises to sustain their work through the pandemic. very, very important as as folks struggle to keep the economy going and their own personal economies going throughout this pandemic and through the lockdowns and the shutdowns. USAID has also supported a number of credit guarantee agreements. USAID and the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation are working together to provide $205 million to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, which have seen a significant downturn in business and face the COVID-19 crisis. As in all of USAID's programs, there is special focus on women because at USAID, we believe gender equality and women's empowerment are not just a part of development, but are the core of development. To providing development solutions. This $55 million credit guarantee we are launching today aims at supporting loans to farmer producer organizations, ag tech companies, and companies engaged in clean energy solutions for the agriculture sector. And as you already heard, through this credit guarantee, we'll be able to introduce and retain clean technologies for smallholder farmers by promoting clean technologies, and climate resilience of communities. In addition, clean technologies offer a sustainable alternative to meeting agricultural demand, address food insecurity, and also to improve nutritional outcomes. I would like to reiterate that to ensure this blended finance model catalyzes agricultural transformation, there is a need for flexible and demand-driven technical support to complement the commercial funding. It has been our experience that access to credit along with technical assistance can maximize the development impact and build on sustainability of the programs compared to just providing providing the finance alone. As such, the partners will help provide market linkages and other assistance. Additionally, our teams from USAID will be able to help with robust monitoring and evaluation systems to help ensure that we iterate as the initiative progresses. We seek to learn as we go forward, and having good data in place in order to measure our success and be able to see where pivots are necessary are something that we find very, very important. And I think that this is something that will be a key element to success as we go forward. At USAID, we strongly believe that a strict level of accountability and learning through data is critical to every development program, and we plan to bring that to the table for this partnership. In closing, I would like to thank the Rabo Foundation, Shell Foundation, the Alkia Foundation for your leadership and vision in this initiative. Thanks again to Batman and Robin, as they're being called, Ellen. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And Arundam, really thank you for your leadership in all of this effort. I would like to thank our partners at DFC, as I mentioned, in making this program possible. And finally, I welcome all the speakers and the participants to this great event. And I hope that you're able to reach out, and we'll continue this as the beginning of a conversation that will extend over the time period of this program. In the chat box, I'll ask my colleagues, Nehal Sanghavi, who you've heard and who's kicked us off to a great event here. Thank you very much, Nehal. And to Satish Menon and Apoorv Shukla to add their contact information in case you would like to reach out to USAID for more information on our programs. I thank you all very much for the opportunity to have this conversation tonight, and look forward to further conversation. And congratulations to all the good and hard work that's brought us to today. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much. Moving right along, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mikhail van Urkel, the Agricultural Counselor for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. He's coming from the Embassy of the Netherlands. Over to you, sir, Mr. van Urkel.
Thank you, Nehal. Thank you very much. I would like to start off with something that Eleanor said, that it wasn't the time for her to pat your own backs. Well, in that case, let me pat your back for doing this great job. Fantastic, really. I remember when Arindam first informed me about this initiative. Well, I was skeptical. I mean, was this going to work? I said, yeah, well, okay, let's go for it. Now I can say it's a pleasure to stand here, or sit actually in front of you. Maybe even more being humble also to sit here in front of you. I'm a very strong supporter of this initiative, but humble because we as the Netherlands government only take a backseat in this. Warren, you have played an important role together with many other colleagues in making this initiative possible. Partners that have taken this initiative, taken the lead and taken the responsibility for this good initiative. It focuses on many of the subjects that are close to all of our hearts, and I could say very strongly the hearts of the Dutch government. In a way, if I may say so, this crisis has opened our eyes to several problems existing already maybe for decades. And how sad the tremendous losses may have been, it has also offered opportunities to make amendments now. Now, like the growing attention that is being given to the relationship between climate change and agriculture, the need for connecting farmers to markets using digitization. These are all initiatives that I expect this fantastic fund will be supporting. These are all subjects very important to our Dutch policy, and we will be happy to further support this great initiative, providing, Warren, as you just said, the important technical assistance wherever wanted and needed and possible from our side. I think this initiative shows that by joining hands, we can achieve quite a big goal. I'll keep it at that. Back to you, Nehal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Wonderful. Moving right along, I'm going to introduce somebody who I have a lot of respect for. She's the country director of the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation here in India. Her name is Geeta Goel, and she's going to be having a fire chat with two wonderful colleagues. I'll let you introduce them, Geeta. Over to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Nehal, and it's great to be here. And I guess congratulations to the entire team to pulling this off. We are looking forward to the results of this program, and having done a few of these collaborative, innovative finance structures, guarantees, or impact bonds, we've also realized that it takes a long time to set them up. And sometimes one may lose patience, but I think the structures are strong enough to, incentivize the right impact or the right behavior that you're trying to achieve. So I think, the initial investment and efforts are well worth it. Hopefully the results will be strong. And in a few years, we should really look back at this moment as a great milestone. So with that, Nehal's already introduced me. Yes, I work with the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation. That's Michael Dell's personal family foundation. We've been in India 15 years. And while we are a philanthropy, I think we've used innovative finance in different ways, including early stage equity investments, to mezzanine debt, to guarantees, to impact bonds, to impact linked interest incentives, many different structures. And I would say, I think going by the tradition of saying finance determines the trajectory of the markets, because at the end of the day, funders have an important, funders or investors have an important voice. I do think, when we add the element of development or inclusion in the way finance is structured by creating different instruments, that definitely allows the market to grow and evolve in different ways. So there's a very strong role, I believe, of innovative instruments and inclusive finance in agriculture finance, in climate change, in all types of impact. And when different sources of capital come together, and I think Eleanor mentioned it, blended finance, yes, it's a buzzword, but it is a reality. Different sources coming together allows for each stakeholder to be on the spectrum of risk return that they want to be. And I think that is the power of how structures like this can yield results. So with that, I would actually like to invite both Dan and Pim. Dan is from FCDO, and I think they would do the best introductions to themselves. They are both people who many of the participants should be familiar with, but I would request, Dan, if you could go first, and then Pim, just a short introduction of yourself and the organization, and then we move.
Sure. Thank you so much, Geeta. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everybody. Pleasure to be here today. Dan Haglund, Senior Private Sector Advisor in the Agriculture Research Team in the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office in the UK. And I lead on our work working with the private sector to scale up solutions in food systems, and including our partnership with Rabo Foundation, who we've worked on for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Geeta. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm Pim Mol, heading up the Rabo Foundation. Rabo Foundation is the corporate foundation of Rabobank, International Food and Agri Bank. It exists for 47 years as a foundation, but the bank exists for more than 125 years and was founded by, no surprise, farmers, making a cooperative. And that's one of the key reasons that we, as a corporate foundation, follow the heritage of our bank. And we focus on access for credit for smaller farmers, and not only the access to credit, but also connecting it, and that's very important, as Warren already stated, it with knowledge, network, and innovation in order to have more impact. And we call that impact to the power 3.
Thank you. And Pim, just to get started off, maybe I would request some insights from you on this whole topic of innovative financing leading to unlocking of capital, just the way this particular instrument is trying to do. I think we've had examples of similar structures in the past, but if you want to reflect and share some examples with the participants here on how structures like this not only unlocked capital for a certain project for a certain period of time, but actually created a more sustainable shift in the market, and therefore having impact much beyond the life of that project.
Thank you, Geeta. First, one step back, because we're sitting here because of the horrible effects of COVID. That's also the reason why we set up this joint partnership. And that may be one of the humble facts that we create, as Mr. Van Erck stated. What has happened is that Rabo knows all our partners that are present over here, Rabo Foundation. In fact, we have cooperated with all of you over many of the projects Geeta is in fact stating. So we know all of you, we have worked with all of you, but now, in fact, a humble fact of COVID is that we all had a lot of time, and that we had time to sit together. 4 years ago, when I started, the key topic of my joining of Rabo Foundation was cooperation. This is true cooperation in all its aspects that we've brought with each other, development capital, public capital, and private capital together in a sense that is unprecedented, I think, let alone that we bring 3 continents together in creating that new structure in blended buzzword finance in a way that goes to a topic when I visited Arindam 3.5 years ago in India, and I was looking in his eyes, then there was always a sparkle when he told me, Pim, we have to scale. And a lot of the projects which we did with all of you, we did a lot, but this is of course real scaling when we are able over 8 years time with leverage of money accumulating to 55 million to reach 220,000 farmers. I think that speaks by itself. So yes, Geeta, we have a lot of examples with all of you, but I think I stick to this one where it all comes together.
Excellent. Thank you, Pim. Over to you, Dan. Again, I mean, I'm just thinking, any other example from your portfolio which both unlocked capital and as well as, sustained it over a much longer period of time.
Thank you, Geeta. And I'm afraid I may disappoint slightly because I too wanted to start by taking a step back and actually reflecting a little bit on kind of where we're at today and where we're going as a global community investing for impact in agriculture. As the presidency of the COP26, the UK has, and it may be no surprise, but we've done a lot of thinking around kind of the broader context we're in and sort of the shifts that are needed. As all of you will know, agriculture contributes to between 20 and 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. Globally, it's linked to about 70% of deforestation and biodiversity loss, which is accelerating. It's the main user of fresh water and so on. And at the same time, the people who are working, small-scale producers, operating in the sectors are in many ways uniquely exposed and vulnerable to climate change. So in this context, I think what we need is nothing short of a transformation of agriculture and food systems. So we launched at the Global Adaptation Summit in January this year a campaign for the COP on transforming agricultural innovation for people, nature, and climate. And I just wanted to say a few words about this because it's sort of the 4 objectives under this campaign and the global action agenda we're putting forward really speak to and kind of fit well with what we're trying to achieve here. So the first objective really is around increasing, the rates of investment, as you mentioned, Geeta, investing in more investment into innovation, the early stage research and development, but through to testing and deploying technologies through to commercializing and importantly scaling solutions for farmers. And I think in this context and given the topic for today, I think this question around linking up that early stage financing to the follow-on financing and the sort of development of pipeline and sort of making sure the right people are talking to each other, which is, it's part of the conversation we're having here today, I think is really critical there. Second objective is really changing how we do that investment into innovation. And I think the challenge here is that we really need to get better at focusing on end users and their needs and aspirations and really kind of understanding the particular contexts in which farmers operate, because of course the needs will be very different from one location to another. And harnessing data and digital and so on to get a better, more granular understanding, and then making sure we can provide the right services and invest in the right solutions for those farmers. And we did some interesting work with Shell Foundation, MasterCard Foundation, kind of looking at rural pathways, and I'll put the link into the chat after, just in a moment, but it does just this and helps businesses basically to think about what do farmers need, and then by serving them better, you improve development impacts as well as basically it's good for business as well. The third objective is around partnerships, and it's about public and private partnerships, but in this context, really, it's about blending our capabilities and utilizing blended finance, and also I think thinking about the broader ecosystems that we need to support to help these businesses to scale. So that's in addition to working with enterprises, working also with standard setters, improving financial access for farmers so they can invest in those technologies and so on. And then finally, the fourth objective of the campaign is around evidence and really shifting from what we see sometimes as a bit of an ideology-based debate around agriculture to much more of an evidence-based debate and dialogue. And I think here, 2 points I'd mentioned. One is, the question around climate finance, where, given the focus of this guarantee facility, we should be generating good evidence around, what different business models around agri-tech and clean tech and post-harvest losses, et cetera, what they're achieving. But importantly, I think, we need to also sort of capture that data and make sure it's available to all the different market participants. And on this point, we're really proud to be partnering with USAID and the Gates Foundation and the Wageningen University in Research in the Netherlands to launch a new initiative called the Digital Agri Hub. I will put the link into the chat as well. We're launching that in a few weeks' time, and that will basically be a sort of a repository of data and evidence on digital ag solutions globally, which should then hopefully help investors as well to identify businesses that they want to sort of look at for perhaps financing. And yeah, I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And I think, yeah, just shifting focus a little bit back to India, given, I mean, of course, I realize there are lots of participants here from outside India, but given that the structure is, based in and the projects are here in India. I think, I mean, I do want to take up a few points that both of you mentioned, just in terms of the large quantum of capital that is required in order to, I mean, just in the India perspective, I think just to meet our SDG goals, we need about $960 billion on an annual basis. The government expenditure is just about 1/3. So definitely a large part of the private capital needs to come into more inclusive, more socially impactful businesses, if we can call it that. And in order to facilitate that entry of private capital, I think, much of the blended capital or catalytic capital or high risk capital that we just talked about is extremely important. So I think I keep going back to the whole importance of unlocking credit and sustainability of it, because if it stops after one project, it will not be enough. I think, I mean, in the second project, we need lower and lower amounts of capital from the public side or the concession side, and more from the private side. So I think just maintaining that balance, that private capital keeps flowing to these sectors in a way that's positively impactful does become important. So I think, I mean, the next point I would really like, I mean, both of you to, throw some light on. And I think, Dan, you referred to this, the role of technical assistance and the role of building evidence, the role of other partners, which I would call all in the concessional capital or support role, and how that eases market creation for the future. Because one is evidence on the farmers, but the other is also evidence on financial viability, so that these businesses can become sustainable and capital flows to them. So again, if you look back at other examples where either TA support or blended finance support has gone in to what I would say creating a market or catalyzing a market, either in agriculture or any other impact sector, that would be great. Maybe we could start with you, Pim, and then move to Dan.
Well, thank you, Gita. Just to reassure you that it doesn't stop as of today. This morning, I'm the chairman of our credit committee, impact committee. We'll come back to that in a minute. And we approved a new deal for India with a similar and a different partner, also totaling with the leverage to 55 million, and also focusing on nearly 160,000 smallholder farmers, especially women, and climate smart agriculture. So it doesn't stop, and we use this knowledge and our partners around in order to take further steps. But as I stated, 2 years ago, the meeting that I was sharing was a credit committee. I just said that now we call it an impact committee. I think one of the key things in order to broaden the scope that they're doing right now needs a paradigm shift. And I think with this combination of partners and the scope of what we're doing in India now for the smallholder farmers, taking into account the various programs, is that we don't focus only on the risk, and the risk that is present, we combine it, because all various risk levels are being addressed by the partners and is combined in one structure. But we also focus forward on impact. So we don't only look at the economic or financial side of it and the risk side of it, what bankers normally do, especially my bank, but we also focus at the social impact and at the ecological impact, and we take that together. So we have a joint totaling of impact instead of only looking at the figures, because the people we work for with each other need that we see them as a person and not only as a figure. And I think that's one of the key things that is happening today also with the structure, that we're shifting with the paradigm and go from a credit approach for the people that we're working for to an impact approach, and that we see the real people and connect them to the needs according to the SDGs that we have to cater for.
Dan, any comments from you?
Yeah, and just to echo what Pim is saying about the shift we're seeing in terms of taking a more holistic look at different types of impact. I mean, I completely agree with you, Geeta, that we need to be thinking about the longer term impact of this, and obviously we want to deploy this capital. We want it to generate impact for people. We want it to generate positive impacts for nature and the environment, and to improve resilience to climate change and so on. But ultimately, we want next time around this guarantee not to be needed, or to need less concessional capital to sort of unlock it. So I think when we talk about technical assistance, and I completely agree that targeted technical assistance is really valuable, and can be designed in a way that doesn't that minimizes any distortion of markets, but sort of alongside the technical assistance to businesses themselves, to kind of help them, whether it's financial accounting systems and things that lenders will require that they might not have in place, even if they're otherwise a well-run business, or it's TA to the lenders to help with pipeline development and so on. I think that the sort of TA, and Warren was referring to this as well, the kind of the through grant funding, monitoring, assessing impact, communicating those impacts, verifying those impacts, and again, digital and data. There's a lot of opportunities there for sort of more cost-effective ways to get sort of even more granular understanding of those impacts. I think that's really key, because I think in doing that, where we help to kind of shift the perceptions of risk in a sector, and importantly, then that has to be impact in terms of financial returns as well as these other areas to shift the perceptions of investors. Thanks.
Yes, and just picking up from there, Dan, in terms of impact assessment, and I think there has been a long-standing complaint, if I can call it that these are expensive, they take time, they take effort, and over a period of time, can you really sustain impact assessments? And I mean, in our view, we've seen that especially when you're trying to design blended finance instruments, which are trying to incentivize a certain behavior, it is important to create that evidence base. It is important to do the impact assessment. Will the costs come down over time? Possibly, yes. I mean, I think with each impact assessment, we should try, or with each evidence base, we should try and create some standards that can at least stick with the industry for a certain period of time, so that each time we are not investing as much. And the other is that as we get comfortable with certain areas or certain instruments or certain sectors, so for instance, in this one, and Pim referred to it earlier, we were doing much smaller projects, and then can you do a much larger project so that you're leveraging, the TA cost or the assessment costs over a much larger population. I mean, in our own work at the Dell Foundation, we've done impact bonds, and I would say that, initially the cost of assessments does look high, but if you can really create a much broader platform, the costs do, definitely reduce over a period of time. And I think as responsible impact investors, that is a target that we should have for ourselves as well, because, at some stage, these assessments should also be borne by the market in a utopian world. That's what we are aiming for. So how do we ensure that the cost of evidence building starts reducing or becomes more standardized so that these instruments can sustain. And in doing so, for the sake of simplicity, we don't take away the nuances of the impact on the farmer or any other sector. So, I mean, just on that note, and maybe this is the last question we have, maybe just taking a couple of inputs from you. I think it would be, again, I would say, if there are specific examples of how, the evidence base has generated larger projects or more capital or, lesser investment from either FCDO or Rabo Foundation. It would be interesting for maybe the participants also to hear it, to say, one assessment, one TA facility, how do we ensure that it has a ripple effect and actually impacts the broader market or your own projects in subsequent phases. So maybe you want to begin with that, Dan. I mean, given that you do invest a lot on TA and evidence building, I mean, any examples there you would like to share?
Thank you, Geeta. Yes, I mean, maybe I could draw a slight parallel to another sector, which is the clean energy and energy access sector, which is an area where, as recent as 5 or 6 years ago, quite significant concession of capital was required to risk and kind of blend investments into, companies like, the solar home system providers in Africa and in India and elsewhere. I mean, we've seen that market really mature to the point that, with the exception of sort of certain subsectors, actually a lot of those providers have been able to scale. Thinking about organizations like MCOPA, for example, and the sort of part of the story there, I think, is around the targeted use of TA and effective communication of what those investments have achieved. I mean, I think there's a broader challenge here around the sort sometimes projectized approaches to these things. It sort of links to political cycles of financing and funding and so on, where an organization, including the FCDO might invest alongside an impact investor in a particular space, for a few years, but then, maybe stop doing so just as the kind of evidence is being generated. And I think, better, I think that's why platforms like the Digital Agri-Hub can be so powerful, because, collating those stories around and that data around, returns and impact that we're having, and then for others to sort of pick up on, is really valuable, because single organizations, they move on in terms of their priorities sometimes. Thanks.
Okay, many comments from you. And these are also, let's say, these are the closing comments, because I know soon we have to hand it back to Nehal. Yes.
A very short one. I don't look back, but I continue with today's impact committee. And it's not a proven concept or whatever, but we had the pilot concept. Carbon is a major problem worldwide with all the climate change. So today we had a project proposal in a corporation again, with 1 acre fund, a department of the bank, and how to help farmers have multiple cropping, and not only with multiple crops, but also cropping with trees because of the carbon. As we all know, it's very difficult to keep the trees on the countryside because they're also valuable. So we finance now a pilot in order to have more trees of a special species that are not valuable for the wood itself, but for long-term stays so that we can have carbon sequestration. And the key thing over here, there's a large chunk is TA. In order to do the monitoring, as you mentioned, with impact over time, Gita, to do the monitoring, how does it work? Does it create value? What is the take-up of carbon, and how does this work on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in order to see how we can build a new business model and perhaps a new structure in order to finance multi-cropping, but also with the trees and do carbon sequestration also in country. This is a project in Africa. So not a success, but I hope this will become a major success over time because we also need it and the farmers need it.
Yeah, very true. Excellent. On that note, maybe once again, congratulating all of you for this great project that is being launched, and maybe I will hand it back to Nehal.
Thank you.
Gita.
Yeah, thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Pim. Wonderful music to everybody's ears to hear that conversation all about impact and how blended finance can get us both financial and development returns. So excellent. I just want to highlight again our thanks to everybody that's participating and that's speaking here today. We do have one final panel and then some closing remarks. This next panel is going to be led by Bettina Prato. She's the Senior Coordinator for the Smallholder and Agri SME Finance and Investment Network, SAFIN, and she will be introducing our 3 financial institutions, Samunnati, Avanti, and Maanaveeya. So over to you, Bettina.
Thank you, Nehal. Thank you for getting the full name of SAFIN right. Even I sometimes stumble over it because once you spell it out, it's quite long. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. Again, my name is Bettina. I am leading a network of organizations, about 50 institutions right now, sitting in different parts of the globe that have a common interest in agri SME finance. And I'm particularly happy to share here that I think Batman, or is it maybe Robin, is actually a member of our steering committee. I mean, Arindo. So I'm particularly grateful to you, Arindo, for the opportunity to be here. And also acknowledge that USAID is also part of our network. So I feel like, sort of among family here, let's say. I also want to take a moment to share that as a learning network, SAFIN this year has really focused a lot on issues related to how to combine this green and inclusive finance agendas from an SME perspective. And we have really struggled, I would like to say in a positive sense, with the question of partnerships, sort of trying to understand how does an effective partnership or an effective process of bringing together all the different ingredients of an initiative like the one that is being launched today, how does that work in practice once we get down to the practicalities of it. So really excited to have the task to moderate this particular panel because we have in this panel 3 people who represent the very innovative, entrepreneurial, and I think also in a sense very brave companies or institutions that are going to play a really key role in getting concrete results and concrete impact for this initiative, meaning making sure that finance is actually getting into the hands of these groups of actors that were laid out at the beginning in this visual representation of the fund. So the panelists are Anil Kumar, who is the CEO of Samunnati, then Guri Sankar, Managing Director of Maanaveeya Development and Finance, which is an Indian subsidiary of Oiko Credit, and then Rahul Gupta, CEO of Avanti Finance. So 3 quite different institutions, which I assume are going to engage with the fund in slightly different ways. So I'll pose a number of questions to each one of you in the panel, starting from giving you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And I do want to encourage you to also use the time we have to respond to each other, react to each other's interventions if appropriate, but also be mindful that there were a number of comments in the chat that I think are probably best addressed by you about, who is going to actually be receiving this funding. How are you going to be selecting the farmer producer organizations and so on and so forth. So we start with introductions, and we start with Anil, and then we go to Guri and then Rahul. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and also your company or your organization and your core business? Thank you. So we start with Anil.
Right. Thank you, Bettina. Am I audible? Is my audio okay? Right. So greetings to everyone from across the time zones. I'm the founder and CEO of Samunnati, an organization which means collective growth, collective prosperity, and collective elevation. We work to make markets work for smallholder farmers. That's the purpose of our existence. And in order to do so, we engage in agri-value chains, in working with the farmer collectives, farmer producer organizations on the supply side of the value chain, and with agri-enterprises on the demand side of the value chain. Perhaps we are the only entity in the country exclusively focused on agriculture, and we don't do anything else. We started our journey as a debit credit company, as a lending institution, and we soon realized that finance is important but not sufficient to bring about a sustainable impact on smallholder farmers. So we got into market linkages as well. And since we work with a large number of farmer collectives, building institution capability of these entities is also something that we focus on. We are about 6 years old in this journey. We have worked with more than 1,000 farmer producer organizations across the country so far. And we also have about 2,500 agri enterprises that we have worked so far. And the throughput, the gross transaction value across these two segments have been little over $1 billion of throughput. That's who we are as an organization. It's wonderful to be here today, a culmination of a pretty complex journey with so many partners coming together and putting together this wonderful program. Perhaps in the subsequent questions, I'll also share why it is relevant for our journey as an organization focused exclusively on farmers. Over to you.
Thank you, Anil. So over to you, Guri.
Hi. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all. Thanks for the opportunity. Wonderful to be here with this project being culminated and being part of this one. And personally, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a development banker with 25 years of experience and a doctorate in agriculture engineering, which I have done least. So I'm sure this is going to give me an opportunity to do something more in agriculture. So as far as my organization is concerned, I am the Managing Director of Maanaveeya Development Finance Private Limited. Maanaveeya in Hindi or Indian language means humane. So basically, this is the subsidiary of ICOCREATE, which has been active in 30 countries in the development finance space, more specifically in the microfinance, SME finance, agri, and renewable. And that's exactly what we do in India also. But having said, our portfolio is skewed towards more of access to finance and a bit job creation to SMEs. And the effort has been for the last 2 years to increase the portfolio in the agri and renewable energy space. So this project is really giving us the opportunity to link both of them and deliver. So we have done decent experience with other projects we have done so far. So these are the 3 things we are doing, and I'm sure this project is giving more opportunities to do more in the agri and renewable energy space, and look forward to that. Thanks for the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Guri. Rahul, over to you.
Greetings, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here today. And at the outset, congratulations to all the actors who made this possible. This has been, a very, very strong collaborative effort, which has spanned 15 to 18 months or even more. And to bring this together today really speaks volumes of everything that's gone on behind the scenes. So congratulations and pleasure to be here. So just a quick introduction on myself. I've been in financial services for over 2.5 decades, American Express, GE Capital, and then Avanti. I have worked in growth, emerging markets and mature markets, India, Southeast Asia, with a lot of exposure to other markets such as US and Europe when I was in GE Capital. Avanti is a very transformational organization, or to be specific, our aim is to be very transformational. So our goal is to make financial services affordable, accessible, and make that happen in a timely manner to about 100 million households in India who are currently out of the formal credit system. And by default, that means that a large play will happen in the agri and agri-allied sector. So in the couple of years that we have been operating and navigating through COVID, unfortunately, in the last year and a half or so, almost about 70% of the business that we have done, which is small ticket lending and some loans to farmer producer organizations, have essentially gone to the agri and agri-allied community. And almost 80% of our beneficiaries are women in the agri sector or the micro SME sector. So this program fits in very well with, what we're supposed, why we are in existence, and looking forward to partnering with the different players in this, because this is something very new. It's extremely catalytic. And for us, I think it's going to be a very strong learning journey as well, because how the smaller farmers have been serviced so far, I think it's going to need to have a very different dimension going forward. And one of the key pillars of what Avanti is trying to do is also serve people who are not very high in their own digital savviness in a completely digital first model. So that's a hard problem that we're trying to solve. And the reason we want to do it is because our belief is that if we want to create a population scale platform, it will only happen if it's digital, where it will breed innovation, it will take out friction, it will empower the users and create disruption in costs as well. So that's a little bit about Avanti.
Thank you, Rabo. I feel like both you and Gauri have already also gotten into the issue of to this initiative. What is the appeal? Why? What is the reason why you are part of this? And I'll get a little bit more in depth into your expectations. But Anil, what about you? We haven't yet heard that side from you. So what is the draw, the appeal, the rationale for your involvement in this?
Right. So Samunnati works exclusively with the farmer producer organizations and their members and the agri enterprises, as I mentioned. And both these segments have been receiving significant attention and tailwinds post-COVID, while they existed much before COVID as well, Bettina. But what this program brought us is the dimension of clean and green, which were not the focus areas for us. So it has in a way brought in a magnifying lens of among the entities that you are working with, among the projects that you are working with, can you also double click on few aspects of these two core elements? And if you layer in what Eleanor mentioned in her opening slide, the 4 focus areas, FPO with gender as double click, then you have agri enterprises with entrepreneurial energy or the startup ecosystem, then of course food loss and clean tech. All 4 are embedded within these 2 segments of FPOs and agri enterprises. But this program would enable us to focus on more of these, so that while doing work, we also pay attention to which parts of this work would be more impactful. That's why.
Thank you, Anil. Great. I'm curious to hear what is, can you walk us through something that will concretely change in what it is that you're actually able to do in terms of your current business model by being part of this fund? I mean, concretely, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month down the line, what will make it possible for you? Gauri.
Yes, Bettina. I think the motivation for Maanaveeya is that, just if I can share, I co-created Maanaveeya works on the 3 P's principle: people, planet, and profits. These are the three principles that ICO follows. That's same for us. So as you can see, my logo also, investing in people is ICO credit principle. That's why we are doing anyway through access to finance and job creation to SMEs. But somehow we feel that our portfolio is more skewed in that direction compared to the planet, what contribution we can to the planet. That's where the project comes in here, that supporting green financing for SMEs, clean tech companies is something we are looking forward to seriously under this project. And I think the one major thing that this project can help me to make a serious dent is that when I'm looking at, because I'm a bulk lending company, I generally look at large companies, and in the renewable energy space, I work with SMEs. I look, these SMEs are smaller, and sometimes my risk score puts them in such a way that the risk premium actually increases the rate of interest to these clients in a reasonable way. Sometimes I do think, is it actually right interest with this type of small clients? So one motivational factor certainly is that this is a great project to give us some risk cover, which certainly helps us to reduce the risk premium, to bring the interest rate in such a way that which is really viable for this type of smaller SMEs. That's one difference we are going to do, Bettina, through this program. Affordable interest rate to the SMEs, agri and renewable energy SMEs.
Thank you. Very clear. Rabo, I was really struck as I sort of was reading up about your model by this idea of a co-design of financial products, right? You know, through this platform. And so I'm curious to hear, do you think that as you get into this initiative and maybe sort of, you know, you strengthen your focus on some of the impact areas that are targeted through this fund, you will see sort of corresponding sort of growth in the demand for financial services that really enable your clients to achieve this double impact on, you know, sort of green and inclusion? Is there a demand for these types of products in that is maybe reflected in, you know, an effort to co-create through your platform?
Bettina, I think the demand certainly exists. I think the challenge is more in building the awareness and education around this kind of blended finance program. And if you look at sort of, you know, leading to what we could do, what will change in our business model through a program like this, for us, and, you know, we're a relatively early stage nascent organization. We started off by building a proof of concept with individual borrowers at the bottom of the pyramid, and really seeing that customers who are extremely data dark, excluded out of the formal financial services system, how could we bring them into the formal fold at rates which are affordable and not charge too much of a risk premium? Now therefore the, you know, average ticket sizes have been somewhere in the region of about $600 to $700 US. What we found also is that if you want to build sustainable livelihoods, and all Avanti's credit program is designed only for livelihoods, we do not give loans for consumption. So if you have to build sustainable livelihoods, you also have to link that to programs which will give people the agency and the empowerment to create those at a very hyper-local level. Some of these, therefore, will also need asset creation opportunities. It's not just about input financing. You'll need, you know, let's just take an example of somebody who wants to create a very locally nuanced food processing unit, which actually, because they're going up the value chain, it's going to deliver better return on investment on them, and therefore help them embellish their livelihoods in a more sustainable way. Now, those kind of, when you talk about asset creation, the tenors of the loans might be longer. The quantum of the loan will be longer. And that is something that this program allows us to do, allows us to experiment with. And the design of the program, therefore, is very, very appealing. And just to, you know, sync up with what Gauri also said, you know, once you kind of leverage this security structure that has been put together, hopefully we can also figure out ways of, you know, external debt, which brings down the eventual landed cost to the borrower from where it is today as well.
So we heard about the importance of the de-risking capital in the structure, and you spoke about how important this is for you as part of what is drawing you to this, what is going to enable you to do things differently. What about the TA component? So we heard in the other parts of this event how important it is to use TA, also build the capacity to replicate the same kind of lending behaviors, for example, to increase the size of the volume of capital that is transacted without the need for de-risking capital maybe down the line. How important is TA for you in this initiative? And what type of TA in particular do you think is particularly important for an institution like your own in being able to intermediate more between green capital and inclusive portfolios? Anil, can we start with you?
Yeah, no, TA is an integral part and an important component in blended finance structures which are not in vogue, Bettina, yet. And what TA can bring in is, forget about the customer, a lot of investment has to be made within the teams in Samunnati to understand what green finance is. And thanks to the partnership with Rabo Bank and USDFC, our understanding of first green finance and then also how dark this green could be has gone up significantly. So awareness is an important dimension of technical assistance. Second comes, what kind of entities should we be working with on priority? For example, if there is a startup which is in, say, sun drying of tomatoes, prior to having a conversation around this guarantee structure, we were treating that proposal as any other proposal, and we were evaluating purely on the merits of whether this is a proven technology, whether there is a capability to pay, and so on and so forth. But ever since this conversation happened, which was a wonderful journey of little over a year, our internal teams, because we have a dedicated team for climate smart agriculture now, they have started bringing in the filter of, hey, you know what, this is also climate smart compliant. Hence, we have to pay more attention to, we have to prioritize this proposal over a regular proposal because one, it is startup. Second, it is clean energy. And more importantly, it is also contributing to reduction in food loss. So that kind of an awareness is what a TA can bring in and what a program like this can build in, Bettina.
Thank you. Gauri, would you agree? Is it the same for you?
Yes, certainly, Bettina. I think I share my one example. Basically, some time back, when we wanted to lend into the renewable energy space, we looked around and felt that solar pumps is a beautiful business. Not because the linkages and anything, just that the companies are doing a great job. There is a government subsidy, I think, to support the companies to implement solar pumps is a great business. We were in there. And then we felt rooftops is good business. We have done it. But this intuitionally we have done, and somehow we have been successful enough there. But having said, did we understand the market well enough to put the money there? And did we understand the opportunity so well? Or did we assess the risk also? Basically, these are one-offs. Though we have a decent portfolio with around 10 megawatts in the rooftops, some of them, for example, I can tell you that the Big Basket, which is an agri company, rooftop is we funded. Quite few solar pumps across India. Some rooftops for the agri SMEs. But having said, this hasn't been done in a structured way. It is an opportunity arose, we did it, and we have been successful enough. But again, I think the TA component we are looking forward to is that the intention is to do a lot in this space. But how do we understand measure the opportunity, identify the opportunity? And when it comes at a portfolio level, how do we understand the risk of this portfolio so that we are able to manage the risk better in our overall portfolio perspective? I think from Maanaveeya perspective, what we are looking at is that to understand and appreciate the opportunities, to fund them, at the same time understand the risk and mitigating that. These are the pieces at my organization level I would like to expect the TA to support us.
Great, thank you. Rahul, you have a different business model. So how do you see the TA part of the fund, and where do you see TA will be particularly important for you to engage fully?
So Bettina, before we started this panel today, I was actually thinking about it. And also because this is going to be a big runway to learn. This is very, very early stage as a concept itself. So fully agree with what Anil and Gauri said. I'll just give a different sort of spin on it in addition to what they've said. And I was trying to sort of tie it into what Avanti does. So, Avanti's created a platform. And what it really means is that we're just not a proprietary balance sheet lender, but we've created a digital spine, which is paperless, presenceless, cashless, where anybody who wants to do financial inclusion can actually leverage our technology to do so. And our goal is that if we can connect the best forms of affordable capital to the people who need it most, we would have played the role of a key player in the ecosystem. And that's how one will get to that lofty ambition of serving 100 million underserved and unserved households. As part of our, hypothesis, we are clear that product development has to happen not sitting in Bangalore or Chennai or Bombay, wherever our head offices is, but actually comes from the field and has to be extremely crowdsourced and hyperlocal. So in the context of, let's say, serving the smallholder farmers, which is very difficult to do so directly, this is where the power of the collectives comes in. This is where the power of the FPO comes in. And therefore, if we now say that you have green, how do you figure out this intersection of green finance, sustainable agriculture, and clean energy, which is not going to happen at an individual farmer level. It's only going to happen at a collective level. And how do we come together to make that happen? And this is where a lot of the TA will be required. The second part is on impact assessment. I think, for us as an organization, for the investors and founders we have behind Avanti, impact assessment is a very important element of our whole journey. And TA or capacity building or just education and training around that is also something that we would look forward to as we go along.
Excellent points. We only have 3 minutes left, so I want to ask you something, and I would encourage you to also be critical as you answer the question. So you entered into this partnership, you've remarked on the long process that it has taken to get to where you are. What has made this partnership work? What have been some of the sort of lessons learned along the way about how to bring such different partners together, lessons that we could replicate elsewhere? Thank you. Anil, then Gauri and Rabo.
So the teams that were in touch with us to coordinate our Rabobank team and the USDFC team, to be precise, Arindam and Eleanor. And these are the two wonderful people, we couldn't have had better people coordinating. And while the journey has been long, the learning has been fantastic for two reasons, Bettina. One, Rabobank is an inspiration for Samunnati. It is one shining example of what can happen to a financial institution that focuses entirely on agriculture, and the principles of collectivization, which are two core pillars on which Samunnati as an idea germinated, we built. On USDFC, they are the first lending institution that agreed for a virtual due diligence on us after the outbreak of the first wave of COVID way back last year in April. Both of them came together because our focus was smallholder farmer, our focus was essential commodities, our focus was agriculture. So when value systems get aligned, time is a less important dimension. We know that this is a long partnership, so it has been a fantastic one.
Thank you, Gauri.
Just if I can add, I have worked earlier in World Bank Group, Bettina, and Standard Chartered. So a bit of Dutch company again. So the speed is not something too bad. So the way Eleanor and Rabo are in the managed, I feel that I never felt that it is slow. Of course, COVID has its impact. But having said, with the bureaucratic approach I have seen enough in the previous organization, I think it's pretty okay. I felt that I didn't feel that way. And having said again, while the speed at which I'm lucky colleagues, basically, Samunnati, I have a debt relation for quite some time. I know very well. And Avanti, our parent, IcoCredit has invested. So there's a great relation for us with both these companies, and to be happy here. And I look forward to learning from them, because I do bulk lending, but I am not good at retail lending, which this piece which I would like to learn from them. And the contribution from our support from Eleanor and Arindam and other the foundations. Basically, I know them also, each one of them personally. So all these things put together, this make this partnership great, I feel.
The personal connection and the trust and the alignment around the overall vision seem to be the really key ingredients. Rahul, would you agree?
Absolutely. And I mean, even though this is going to sound repetitive, but it must be repeated that Eleanor and Arindam were absolutely fantastic. And I wouldn't like to really dwell upon how much time it took, but I think look forward and really see how quickly and effectively we execute. And I think, the coming together, at least of the three Indian organizations who have, I think we all feel fortunate and privileged to be selected, I think that's been very organic. We are all serving the similar cohort of customers. We just have different models to do so.
Thank you so much. I was hoping to try to find some answers that wouldn't require necessarily cloning Eleanor and Arindam, or sort of asking them to maybe also support the brokering of partnerships elsewhere, but it really boils down to the human element and to the commitment and capacity for vision and trust building. So I'm very happy to honor that. With that, thank you so much for your contribution, and best of luck for your work ahead. And I give the floor back to Nihal.
Thank you so much, Bettina. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Gauri Shankar. Fundamentally, we can never underestimate the power of a small group of people that are wanting to change the world. And clearly that small group was evident in the last panel and the previous discussions. Again, thank you to everybody that's made all of this happen. I'm going to turn it over to Ramraj. And specifically, when I turn it over to you, Ramraj, would love to hear your closing remarks, but also personally want to say that we started out thanking IIC, the Impact Investor Councils, and I'm going to end also thanking the Impact Investor Council, and also express thanks to your team, Ranjana and Vedanta, who have been instrumental in helping out for this evening. Over to you, Ramraj.
Thank you, Nihal. And good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ramraj. I head up the India Impact Investors Council. We are an industry body, which is a not-for-profit focused around bringing more impact capital to the impact investing sector in India. I must say it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege for us to host this event and to bring this entire ecosystem together. That's really what IIC has been built together and brought together for. And I must say this was a very fascinating session. Kudos to the entire set of partners, USAID, DFC, Rabo, FCDO, Shell, IKEA, as well as some of the implementing partners like Maanaveeya, Avanti, Samunnati, and others. Just by way of closing remarks, I must say that this is a structure which has several very admirable elements. I think it has great simplicity on the front end, and a lot of the complexity has been taken to the back end. So I mean, finally, you end up with a structure which is a 50% guarantee in the front end, which I think is a very, very elegant and admirable part of the structure. And I'm hoping, and I have two, if I may say, hopes and one request. I'm hoping that this is going to motivate many, many more organizations, whether they are foundations, whether they are DFIs, to come together and participate, if not in this consortium, in some other consortium, so that we are really able to make a significant difference in agri-financing. That's my first hope. I think my second hope, and Anil touched upon it briefly, is that over a period of time, we are able to take some of these structures to the capital markets. Finally, this is a structure which over a period of time, if we are able to securitize it, if we are able to get some of the public banks and other people, take up this asset as a part of their PSL or other requirements, I think that would be the other side of, if I may say, the sustainable finance market that we really need to catalyze. We've now really catalyzed the demand side of it. Other side is on the funding supply side. My request really is that if this consortium can, on an ongoing basis, come back and can we bring the stakeholders together to keep providing updates to the market in terms of how things are going, or what has been the performance and so on and so forth. Because in my view, evangelizing an emerging asset class like agri-finance is very crucial. And I think bringing in the larger public sector bankers, bringing in the larger institutions and getting them comfortable with this whole area of agri-finance, particularly transition-related financing, I think is an important agenda. It's a softer agenda, but I think that is something that I would request, that if maybe on a 3 or a 6 month basis, we are able to keep coming back and bringing the stakeholders together to showcase to them how things are progressing. I think that would be something which would also be an important part of the market development effort. On behalf of the IIC, I'm really thankful to all the dignitaries and other people who graced the occasion. We had Michael from the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands. We had Nihal, Eleanor, and Warren from USAID, Pim and Arindam from Rabo, Dan from FCDO, Geeta from Dell Foundation, Anil from Samunnati, Gauri from Maanaveeya, and Rahul from Avanti Finance, and last but not the least, Bettina from Safin. Thank you all so much for your presence, for your comments, and for the time you've spent in helping us bring this market together. And before I end, I'd like to really thank my entire team at IIC. I think Nehal spoke about Vedant and Ranjana, but we do have others like Sagar, Shriya, Aman, Dipanshi, and others who've been part of bringing this event together to you. We are really hoping that we will continue to, do this very important role of bringing all stakeholders together, and hope we can all stay in touch and continue to bring events like this to you guys. With that, we would want to conclude this event. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to all of you, and look forward to seeing you on another event very soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.